This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you in partnership with ministryleague.com. We would love for more people to discover this show, so please rate and review us on iTunes or your podcast provider. Feel free to share on your social media and subscribe at benandtravis.com for the free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. This is part 2 of our interview with wife, widow, now what author Rachel Engstrom.
And I think a lot of people, when they listen, obviously the Helping Healing Humor podcast, they're looking for things that sort of, just things that we can do, practical things. And Travis mentioned that you do this in the book. You talk about some of those. So I wanted us to kind of, at least in this episode, what is one thing that you might tell someone, maybe not that's going through that with their spouse, but what was something that someone did that as a support? I know you mentioned your parents, but are there any other things that you can think of where people can benefit those who are going through it? How can they be there and help?
Yeah, one of the most difficult things is, especially, with chronic illnesses, they're expensive. With cancer, the statistic as of 2021 is there are 16,400 is the amount of uninsured expenses per year the average cancer patient pays.
Wow.
We had amazing coverage. I tallied up after he died, just for kicks, how much his healthcare cost was. It was like $4.2 million or something like that over the course of 27 months.
Wow.
So one thing that's really helpful is you don't really think about, people know we're at the hospital or things, but just giving somebody Venmo, PayPal, whatever, $20 so they can get money in the cafeteria. We had to pay, I want to say it was like $60 a month for the parking pass to park at the parking garage. Gas cards. It's a lot of running back and forth, tangible things like that. If you can't financially do those things, I had neighbors that would, older neighbors within our neighborhood that wanted to help. They would make us bread. We had someone that lived across the street that he'd worked inside his whole life, and now he was happy to mow the lawn and shovel and do all these things, those things that take time that you don't have time for. Let someone take your dog for a walk, let someone feed your cats, whatever that is. When someone says, how can I help? Let them go to the grocery store, let them go to Target, let them go to the pharmacy, let them do those things. All those extra things that take energy that you really don't have time for, but that need to get done. Just say, hey, can I help you knock a couple things off your list of to-dos?
That's really cool.
It could be you are the touch point person that gets the update from the spouse or the cancer patient that does the Caring Bridge post. Mm-hmm. That does that to let everybody know how they are, because it's so overwhelming to have people want to know, and you want them to know, but it's overwhelming to be inundated with lots of, how are they doing? What are you doing? Da, 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 da. So, if you are willing to do that, use those gifts, use those God-given gifts to help.
Yeah, I just think back, and Ben and Travis know this. Rachel, of course, you don't know. I lost my father-in-law a year ago to a pretty just crazy time, very quick. And like you mentioned, Caring Bridge, I wish that we could have had your book just to have those tips, because I remember us specifically sitting in the living room at 2 a.m. texting people, just replying to everybody's messages and not even realizing that there were, and just in the moment, not even realizing that there were things that were out there, that we could take advantage of and use. So it's just even hearing the tips that you had, I can see how your book can be so beneficial, to so many different types of situations. So I'm just excited to be here and listening. I'm 31, so I look at your situation and go, your strength is incredible. And I appreciate your honesty and just your willingness to share your story.
Thank you.
How long before you started, or maybe the inspiration, the idea came for you to start writing your book?
So he died in April of 2013. I decided, I ended up having so much pain that summer. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I went to my doctor my gynecology surgeon, and I said, my husband died, and he had met my husband in my previous appointment before my last surgery, and he just said, I am so sorry. And I just said, I'm in so much pain. My quality of life is awful. Can I have a hysterectomy? So 6 months after my husband dies, I have a hysterectomy. So that's a whole nother level of loss. So in the summer after he died, I had friends that did a fundraiser for me. And I took that money. Not everyone understood. My brother and his wife completely did not understand. But I took, and my parents were like, she's got to go. She needs a break. She needs, she's got to do her own thing. I took that money and I went to Alaska for 17 days by myself. I went on a cruise. I'd always said, I've seen the Titanic. Tell me what you will. But I never thought I'd be a widow at 31 either. So I went on a cruise that went from Alaska all the way down to Vancouver and then back again. And it was this healing journey that years later, when I'm working 3 part-time jobs trying to keep this house I thought would be filled with half of me and half of my husband, little feet running around and healthy and happiness and all these things, and that I'd have someone help me pay for it, I could look back on this amazing trip. So I was able to see mountains and glaciers and and wildlife and the most amazing things that really humble you and make you feel the size of a pea, especially when you've been going through so much and you see so much illness and so much death. So it was amazing, this just most amazing thing to do for myself. There were parts that just really sucked because I'm thinking, I really wish he was there with me. Bummer, he can't see this. He would like this, and I'm thinking, duh, he can see all of it, unlimited. He's got all the channels.
I'm going to use that. And so
He's got all the channels.
Go ahead and giving you, credit for that now. When you hear me preach that's Rachel Engstrom. So.
Yeah, and I remember watching the last episode ever, the series finale of The Office, and we used to watch it together and feeling guilty watching it without him, and I'm like, duh, he can watch whatever he wants at whatever time up there. But so I went to Alaska. I have a whole chapter on it. It was just the most amazing thing ever.
There's so much you go through in these times that you're not taking care of yourself. You were taking care of him. And at some point, and that's where you said some people didn't understand it, but they probably didn't understand how draining and how difficult and how hard it was during those times. And I try to tell people who are going through that, if I'm in a counseling session with them or whatever, you got to take care of yourself, because it's hard to take care of someone else when you're not caring for yourself. But I know that generally is just almost impossible to do. You're having to put so much into them. So this was probably a very therapeutic thing for you. And it sounds like it by the way you've described it.
It was. And after he died, it's I'm 31 and I have to plan a memorial service. And I go to my church, which is down the block, and I'm sitting there, on the gold lame wooden couch that I'm thinking, Gladys and Stuart have sat on this couch, when their spouses died. This is not natural. I'm Rachel. I'm 31. And I'm thinking holy cats, I am a WIDOW. It's just what? I planned this service and I'm okay, I've got the slideshow. I've got the music. This is what I want. And then we'll have the sermon. And I'm what? I didn't think about that. I was just planning my part. But I had this beautiful service where I had the slideshow with New Order and with the, his favorite music. And I had everybody wear bright colors because I didn't want people to mourn. And it was just really bizarre walking into the church last, as if it's a wedding, but it's not. And everyone's staring at you and they're wanting to know, how's the widow feeling? How are they doing? And it's just very, very bizarre, weird times. But I always said there's a song by Moby. There's a song, Jesus Was an Only Son. And I thought that and then the Moby song, I want those played at my funeral. So I played them at his memorial service. So doing all these things and just being so tired, because what was really odd is you walk out of that hospital in the weeks afterward, you're still the hamster feeling like you're running in the wheel, but someone's taking the wheel away. So now you have to figure out now it's me. So I was blessed enough that when I switched jobs the year that he was in remission and healthy, one of the benefits that they offered was life insurance policy. So I took a policy on myself and him. And I just like to say that because I don't want it to sound like I cashed out on him at all. But I was blessed to not have to work for like 9 months. So I, had the surgery, did the trip, took care of myself, doing all these things. And I just slept so much because I was so tired. And one of my sisters came to visit 3 months after he died. And she's like, oh my gosh, you look like a different person. You look rested. Because you're right, Ben. It's just, you're so tired all the time. So it was really weird to have that shift of like, it's okay to take care of myself now. But when you lose your spouse, you don't sit around eating salads. You eat cake, you eat pizza, you sleep in the day, you're up at night, you do all these things. So it's like trying to do all those, have my own sense of normalcy. So I'm going through all of that. And then, so that summer of 2013, and then in about February or so, I remember I was standing in my bedroom of 2014 and I thought, this was really hard. I should write this down to help other people. I want to make a guide of it because there's nothing like this out there. So I started putting those Caring Bridge and those Facebook posts in order, and then it just became too painful because I'm reliving it and I'm seeing it again. So I actually did not put virtual, because I'm typing, pen to paper until 2018. And then I published it in the fall of 2020. So I put it all in chronological order, which is really cool that you're reading it in real time of how I navigated it and seeing it with all these resources, because I did have to figure out, this would have been my wedding anniversary. This is really crappy. I don't want to be by myself. So I have a dinner with girlfriends. It's Christmas time. How am I going to, the first Christmas, I dated someone like 6 months after he died, and I didn't even know till years later how much of lidocaine it was, or a Band-Aid on the situation, or these things. And I had Christmas with this person, and I talk about it in the book, and you'll be laughing your butt off, Travis, but it's like, it's Christmas Eve and you'd think you'd watch a Christmas movie. They're loudly watching the Smurfs movie, and I go in the little bedroom where I'm sleeping and I don't have a Kleenex and I'm bawling my eyes out, so I blow my nose in my shirt. And it's just like, this is the worst Christmas. And I had like decorated my house for Christmas and everything. The next year, the year after someone dies, it becomes more real that they're gone. And that you stop looking at the door and expecting them to walk through it, things like that. So I had decorated for Christmas, then I got depressed. So 4 days before Christmas, I took all the decorations down. So I have sections of how to navigate holidays, anniversaries, birthdays, all of these things, how to do this, because you have to make your new normal in a way that's not going to break you. You have to make it in a way, no pun intended or cliche, that's going to make you. So, and then when you're super sad, you got to ask for help. You can have a certain amount of time of mourning, weeping, doing these things, but you really have to light a fire under your own butt, because nobody else is going to do it.
Even if it's a text at 2:00 in the morning, that's been such a tremendous blessing to me. These guys that are on the podcast with me, they've woke up many a morning and there'd been a text. Travis was up at 3:00. What was he doing? We are so connected to some level today, and to be able to go, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I know it's crazy, but here's what I'm thinking and feeling. Can you make heads or tails with it? And sometimes the reply is, we have no idea how to make heads or tails out of it, but we validate what you're going through.
That's the most important thing, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. After he died, the month after he died, I say out of my life, I think it was like 177 Facebook friends. I threw 70 people in a private group, and I did a healing blog. So I'm literally bleeding virtually on paper. One day I'm like, hey, it's been 2 months. I can't believe how great I feel. And the next day I'm like, I can't stop crying. So you need to be able to do that with no judgment, to have that support. And people, like I was saying for the first episode, when I, would be driving home from the hospital and you're talking to friends or family or whatever, you're going to have people in your life that you call or text, and they're going to be like, Travis is going through this right now. It's all about him. It's all about what he's going through. Let him vent, let him talk, let him whatever. And more than likely, we're going to be doing that vice versa for them when they need it in their lifetime. It might not be for a couple years or whatever, but it's so important. I actually have reminders on my phone for certain people in my life for me and sometimes I'm busy and I don't do it. But I make sure that I have these reminders on my phone, and I'll catch up with them later to check in with friends, whether it's a text or an email or a quick Marco Polo or a FaceTime or whatever, because letting someone know that you care is the most, it's one of the best things you can do. I when I was, for better lack of words, propositioning who to let me help you, let me heal you with my book when it came out. I found someone that's in Canada. She's in Winnipeg, and she took care of her husband who had acute lymphoblastic leukemia for 2.5 years. Then she got diagnosed with the exact same thing. Then he died 4 months later. So she's fighting for her life alone in Canada during COVID. And we've become like sisters, and it's amazing. And we talk all the time, and those different things, but life gets busy. Sometimes they're like, oops, I need to check in with them. I need to do those things. So sending someone a text or an email or a quick whatever means so much more than you will ever know.
Well, Satan has got to hate that, that we can take his best punch and through God use that to become a stalwart, I think I said that right, for someone else. And I think it says a lot about you as a person and your support group, that at some point it hit you, hey, how can I take this and use it for the benefit of someone else? And that's really what this whole podcast is about. Really, our relationship with God is to take the things that he's gotten us through and then be a little bit of a support to help somebody else.
What's so intriguing about this conversation and everything is the strength of people, and it's like from the outside looking in, like Travis, you and Rachel have a connection, through leukemia, and then Ben, you have a connection with the counseling world, and helping people kind of navigate these waters. And then it's like, oh, there's Will, what is he looking at? And it's just like being that type of person looking at the outside and just wanting to be a helper. It's like you see opportunities to help, but you also look at people and go, man, you are so strong. And I just hope one day that whatever I'm faced with in life, that I can carry that same strength, And so I'd be kind of curious, Rachel, I'd read in some stuff that you had sent Travis that one of the things you learned about yourself was you were stronger than what you believed that you were, or you were able to handle more. Like, how did you come about finding that strength?
So first off, the four of us are in this square like Sesame Street. One of us doesn't belong. Don't think that you don't, because the thing is, you lost and I'm sorry for your loss, you lost your father-in-law, and that not knowing what to do or how to navigate it is giving you experience with whether you're learning through me and my book or whatever other outlets. You're going to use what you didn't know, and then you'll be like, oh, because I didn't know what to do, now I know, and now I'm going to be able to help someone else. So your experience happened in the way it was supposed to happen, to be able to know what was missing to what you can do to help somebody else. So you are more on par than you think, my friend. Part of it was just knowing that I was like the Energizer Bunny when he was sick and he was in the hospital, and you just keep going and going and going. And I talk about these things, Travis, as you were listening to it, and I'm talking about how a nurse leaves the room and I put on my pajama pants and I get the room ready and I get the bed ready, and this is our new normal, and we're hanging out and we're watching movies and we're doing those things. I think God gave me so much natural grace is a gift of, all right, Rachel, this is your new normal. Pack it up. This is what it is. Accept it. And within that, it gave me like a big, you get to breathe out. You get to go on. And those times allowed me to recharge my battery even when I wasn't knowing it. And so then that gave me level of strength upon and upon and upon and upon. Because all of a sudden I'm the only one that's working full time. He's sick, and then later he's died, and I have to pay the bills. I have to make it work if I want to keep this house. I work 3 part-time jobs, lots of unsuccessful. I was a professional nanny in my 20s. I have lots of unsuccessful jobs where someone hires me and then they're like, oh, we don't need a nanny anymore. And I'm like, this is my livelihood. So meanwhile, I'm selling anything and everything on eBay and Amazon and having garage sales several days a week and doing all these things and balancing all these plates in the air. And I work the 3 jobs tour with children that have autism and other disabilities. One is a lady helping with multiple sclerosis at night. So I'm just constantly going and going and going, and most people would not be able to do that. Some days I work 16-hour days, and that is, it's only the grace of God that kept me going. And I was just in survival mode all the time because I had to be. But I think those are the levels of strength. You think of like sediment or, those layers we learn, or even the picture behind me, like the levels of stuff we learn in school about the dirt and all that, those were the levels I kept getting that I didn't even know were there. It was like reserves.
I think about this when I'm dealing with clients a lot of times, and Travis has said this before, and I hear it in your answer too, and that is you took a moment at a time. You took it a day at a time, or even a second or a minute at a time. And Travis talks about being where your feet are. And, there's just so much to that of, I think it's Corey Ten Boom that talked about don't carry 2 days' burdens at once. Don't worry about tomorrow, because it's so easy in the moment that you're going through these things to get lost in what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen in a year. Where am I going to be? Oh no, here I am. That widow word coming up before it was even time for it to come up. And if you get too lost in what's coming or in the past, things that have happened, then it's overwhelming because I'm carrying more than 1 day's burden at a time. And so, a lot of it was you had a gift of being able to just be where you were. It sounds like that you did that pretty well.
I guess. Boy, it was so hard, and it didn't seem like it. And it was one of those things like, when you have a vacation coming up. And it's going to be awesome. If you're going somewhere, where you're going, a few of the things you might do. But then when you're on it, you're like, okay, I have 6 days left. I have 5 days left. I have 4 days left. And it's like got like this mystical look to it, but you don't know what it is. That was my life. And it was just kind of like, I'm young enough that I know I will find love again. I know I will make it. I don't know how, but I know I will make it. I trust that God's got a plan. And I totally made all these mistakes and fell on my face and, made not always the great choices. But I'm reading my Sarah Young's Jesus Calling and like, oh my gosh, this is so applicable every day.
Yeah.
Every day it seemed like it was written for me. And I'm like, how do you know? And like, those things. And you just believe.
The Holy Spirit is an amazing thing. And I think that's to speak to that. And then I'll have, one more question to ask you to unpack a little bit. You get into that almost like the donkey, and in my particular instance, exactly like a donkey, if you get that. But it's like that carrot that's out in front, and you're just like, okay, today I have a 2-hour treatment. I'm going to get through it, and then we'll talk business after that. And so it was like that carrot that was out there, and what I had to fight was the thought of I'm never getting out of this hospital. November 22nd is never going to get here. And so it was that constant, well, it'll get here eventually, but I can't think of that right now. I've got to follow this carrot, and maybe just a little bit of time, I'll get a bite every once in a while to keep me going. And so I think that's something, I know that's something that you gave your husband, because that's what my wife gave me, was the times where I thought I couldn't fight anymore, she was there. Or somebody would show me a picture of my kids and go, okay, I'm going to fight until there's no fight left. And, I've seen that. I've read that in your book, that was kind of the approach. Not that we don't ever look forward, but exactly what you're talking about of today is enough for today. And then my question is, we've talked a little bit about dues in your book. It's, man, so awesome in that. And I've mentioned that. And I completely agree. If you're not even going through a crisis now, this book is worth reading, because it will happen. Something will come along, whether you're like your parents have to step in and help, or like my in-laws and my mom and them having to take care of my kids while I was in the hospital. It'll come. But what are some don'ts? What are some things that even when people, and good intentions are great. And I think we have to give people the benefit of the doubt. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And so they just give it their best. But if you could be practical yet again, and you seem very practical, your book is practical. What are some don'ts? What are some things that aren't helpful?
When you go through something, and I always use the word catastrophic, when you go through something that's catastrophic, you have so many people rally. You have so many supporters during the illness, for my situation, my circumstance, then the death. Then everybody goes back to their normal life. It's the end of the commercial. It's Full House. It's the end of, now it's Fuller House. But it's the end of the commercial. There's the sappy music and they're not in a fight anymore. Well, your life is still going. A grenade was thrown at my life and it blew up. I had so many times when I was so lonely. I, like I said, no family here. I had a family of friends that I created, but they go back to their marriages. They go back to their children. They go back to work. They do their things. So it's very, very isolating. And that's one of the biggest reasons I wrote this. This is not about me. This is my ministry of helping other people. So one of the key reasons I wrote the book is I have cried thinking about the fact that I wish that I would have had this. I've cried when I was writing, I would write for 6 hours, say, and then cry for 20 minutes because it's just so heavy. And when you're going through it, it doesn't matter all the resources in the world. You still feel so alone because you might have someone. I had a lot of people that were like, oh, my aunts died, or my mom's died, or my siblings died. It is not the same as the person you planned your life with. It is not the same at all. I think people are really well-intentioned. And I don't want to forget, I have a chapter called Bitter Betty of when I'm comparing myself to other people. And I think social media is so hard and all these things. So I have tips on all that. But people are very well-intentioned. But one of the worst things you can say to someone that's going through grief or an illness is, I get it, I understand, or I know. Because you don't, unless you have been through it, you do not. That's almost like you really feel like it's a gut punch or someone has slapped you in the face. I think just saying that you get it and you understand when you're not in those shoes, what you really do need to say instead is, I can't imagine, or I'm so sorry to hear that. Do you want to let me know? Or I can't imagine, would you like to tell me more? Because that opens the door to, they might say, no, today I can't. I don't have the energy to. But it makes it optional instead of slapping someone with your words. And people really do mean the best. So it's not like my life is perfect. But God has said, Rachel, you went through A, B, and C. So now use those skills to get through D, E, and F. Because I think it's really important that when I'm presenting myself and I'm presenting my story, I'm not like, I wrote this book, it's great, and things are all sunny and positive now. Life is still really hard. I am praying and hoping that all the really ugly stuff happened to me when I was young. But life is really hard, and hard things do happen. Just being sensitive and knowing that every situation is different. God's giving us the grace and the tools of how to deal with it. And we get the choice of, my brother told me early on in my husband's illness, you can choose to be better or bitter.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. Until next time, look for us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.